Hi, my name is Jim Balla. I'm the service tech here at Buyers Products. Today's video, we're going to be changing the gear motor on a few spreaders, the PRO1500CH, the PRO2000CH, and also the PRO2500CH. But before we get started, make sure you mash that like button, subscribe, become part of the SaltDogg and SaltDogg family. Also, a quick overview of what we're going to be doing today. We'll be taking the shield off, cover, some electrical stuff. Up in front, we're going to measure some bearings and make sure they're the right size. Then we're going to get to that gear motor, undo the chain, and then we're going to get it all apart and we're going to put the new gear motor on. So let's see what the tools we need to do the job. So the tools we're going to need for the job here today will be, first thing is our gear motor. This has a orange decal on it. That means it's the newer gear motor. Also, we have an impact. We have a flat screwdriver. We have a needle nose pliers, Sharpie. We have a deep well 1/2 inch socket. Of course, we have a 1/2 inch driver for the impact. Also, we have a pair of channel locks, 15/16 deep socket, some extensions for the 1/2 inch socket. We have a scale, 15/16 wrench, drift pin, hammer, and then a breaker bar. Also, what I made up here is a 12-volt battery with an older harness on it, so we could plug in the gear motor and rotate the chain to the proper location so we could take the master link off. So let's go get those covers off. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is take this brace off. We have two bolts on each side, 2 here and 2 there. We're going to take those off. Then we're going to go up to the cover and take those 2 off. Then there's 2 underneath that we have to grab off too. And then again, there's 2 electrical connections here we're going to pop off. So let me just knock these off real quick. All right, so I got all the screws off, so I'm just going to kind of get this cover off. And there's our gear motor. All right, so we're down here. What we have to do now is try to find the master link on the chain. But first, what we're going to do is connect the power so I can rotate the chain. So that's what I said before. I hooked up a battery with an older harness. So make sure with the harness you go red to red, plug it in, then green to black. If you don't do it this way, the chain will run reverse and damage the spreader. So make sure you do it this way. So now that I have the motor hooked up, again, don't put your hands in there. We're just going to watch and try to locate that key. All right, so we located the master link. And one of the tips that you can use is maybe put a piece of tape, closer so you don't go past it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to jog it one more time and get in location so we can take it apart. Also, before we start some of the stuff, this is a new spreader. You're going to want to, have some anti-seize, some, liquid wrench or blaster, because if your salter has seen some salt and it's been used, you're gonna need a little bit more than just, a hammer or stuff, just get stuff loose. So let's just jog this forward a little bit. Make it easy to get it off. All right, there it is right there. All right, and then I'm going to disconnect the power. And then we're going to go to the other side of the spreader and loosen the tension on the chain. All right, so we're at the front of the spreader now, and what we're going to do is just measure from the bearing to the end of the 1/2 inch square stock. So I got about 1 3/4 inches. Then I'm going to measure the other side. It's like 1 3/4 inches. I'm going to write it here just so I don't forget. Okay, this is what we're going to do. So when we retighten it, I know I can retighten it to 1 3/4 inches, and we're set to go. So the next step to loosen this, there's a lock nut right here. So I'm going to need a 15/16 wrench, and I'm going to have to loosen both sides so I can loosen the threaded rod, the take-up bearing, so I can push it forward, which will give us slack on the other end to take the master link off. All right, so quick tip here. When we do loosen that lock nut, you want to loosen it to like an inch, maybe inch and a half further back, because we have to take that bolt, loosen it enough so we can move the bearings towards the back to keep the chain loose. So what I have is a 15/16 deep well socket on extension. It's hard to show you on film, but we got to go in there and get it on the, actually I'm on it, get it on the bolt, and then loosen as much as we can, and then you'll feel the pressure release from the chain. And then once we get both sides done, we'll go get that master link off. All right, now that we got the chain loose, as I show you, again, the power is not connected. So I'm going to put my hands in here, make sure that no power is connected to the gear motor. So what we want to do is, I'm just going to take this and kind of move the chain a little bit, make sure it's loose. So it makes it a little bit easier for the master link to come off. So you see how it's loose now. And now what I'll do is I'll take my needle nose and take those cotter pins off. All right, so some of the cotter pins are on the inside of the gear, or the chain, and some are on the outside. This one here was actually on the inside. So a situation that might occur would be that the pin, you can't get it out, so you'd have to go to this gap right here. So what I did is I had the chain loose enough, thankfully. So I took the chain and got as much slack as I can, and I could jump a gear. So now my pins here are through the gap, so I can knock them out through the gap. So now if the cotter pins were on the outside, then we could knock them out toward the inside, it would be no problem. So you could get it either way. So, all right, let me get this pin out for you guys. Yeah, I just needed one tap, and then it looks like it'll come right out. Also on these pins, there is a little step in there, so they do go in a certain way in the chain. So there's a little step on right below the head. All right, now I'm just going to knock the other one out, then we'll get the gear motor off. All right, so what we did is we got the cotter pin out, we got the pins both out. What I've done is just take the chain and kind of open it up so we have access to the sprockets. Now our next step is we're going to take this cover off, then we're going to take the 4 bolts off for the gear motor and get it replaced. All right, so we got the 4 bolts out, and I'm going to take the cover off. That gives us access to what we need. So again, move it away. Got a bolt here, 1, 2, 3, and then one just kind of down in there, which we're going to have to move this chain a little bit to get to it. I'm going to have to use like a ratchet to get the 3/8 bolt out. So what I did, I went to the front of the spreader, and I just took the chain and kind of pulled it back a little bit, just so we can access this one bolt over here, and gets us a little bit more clearance too. All right, so before we get those 4 bolts off, we do have to take this bearing off. So you got a set screw, 2 set screws to take off, and then these 2 bolts or nuts we're going to take off. We're going to slide the bearing off, and then we're going to loosen up the gear motor. All right, so we got the old gear motor off and the new gear motor on. And we know that because of the decal, orange decal. So what we're going to do is just take off the gears, take off the keyways. Again, 2 gears, 2 keyways. Again, make sure you know which way they go on. The set screws are towards the center of the shaft. You want to use a dead blow kind of hammer so you don't damage the keys. And what we do is when we put them back on to the spreader, we'll have to adjust the gears to where the chain is so it's in line. All right, it takes a little bit of finagling a little bit to get the gear, both gears in and underneath this cover here. So now we got it in. So what we're going to do is we're going to mount the 4 bolts, at least get them started. We're going to get the bearings started, then we're going to tighten it all up. All right, so we got the motor on, bearing. So what I'm going to do now is our gears are loose right now, so what I want to do is get the chain to a point where I could put the pin in with a little bit of room. So I'm going to pull each end. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to check and see that that the chain is centered, and once it gets really close to centered, I'm going to start tightening up the set screws. All right, so here's the pin. So don't forget, there is a little tab on there. So when we put the pin in, we got to have it set in there. I'll tap it. But then you might have to rotate it a little bit so it could drop in to the slot. And usually the slot's kind of like in back. All right, so we got the pin in. It's seated into that little notch. And I'm just going to put the cotter pin in now and bend it, and we're going to do the same thing to the other side. All right, so we got the pins in, kind of cotter pins bent up. Now we're going to go toward the front of the spreader, and we're going to tighten this chain up. Again, we line up the gears. Looks like it's set up, all the way in the gears. Now we're just going to tighten it up and get this chain to those dimensions we took before we'd actually loosen the bearings. All right, so we got everything together. We got the pins in, we got the cotter pins bent, ready to go. Double checked our measurements and double checked our centering of the chain. So now what we're going to do, we're going to go to the front of the spreader. And if you remember, we took those dimensions of where the take-up bearings to the end of that piece is. We're going to get to those measurements, tighten it up, and then we're going to run the chain, make sure there's no hiccups in it. So here we go. All right, so we're at the front of the spreader. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull the sprocket back toward me a little bit. Take up some of the slack. Remember, we took a dimension before as of 1 inch and 3/4. So what we're going to do is I'm going to snug each side a little bit to comes close to that. Then we're going to come and do the final dimension. So what I'm going to do is kind of go in here, which is hard to see, and just tighten it up a little bit. All right, so I tightened both sides up. I'm just double checking the measurements, make sure they're close, both right about 1 and 3/4. I snugged up the locking nuts on each side. Now we're going to go to the front and we're going to run it, about a half a revolution all the way around, make sure it's not locking up or anything. Okay, so I'm going to hook up the power again. Remember, red to red, black to green. This way it's going to run the proper direction. If you hook it backwards, it's going to cause a problem. It's going to jam up and mess up the chain. So make sure those are always red to red. So I'm just going to power it up a little bit. Sounds good. All right. I think that's pretty good. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to disconnect this. We're going to put the cover on, put the shield on again, the big plastic cover, and then this back brace here, and then we should be good. All right, we got everything buttoned up. Got the cover, got the brace, got the other little cover that was over on top of the gearbox. So there you have it. We just replaced their gear motor on the PRO1500CH, but also it goes for the PRO2000CH and then the PRO2500CH. Don't forget, smash that like button, subscribe, become part of that SaltDogg family. Any questions? Give us a call, email us. We also have a website, buyersproducts.com. Go look on there, check us out. Go buy a dog and chase a storm.